Hey there, and welcome to this brand new explainer. Today, we're going to be looking right past the static streets and coastlines outside our windows, and we're diving into the restless, hyperactive engine that literally forged North America.
You know, there's a saying, America is not finished, it's a place still being built while also fighting to exist. Think about that for a second. We are quite literally living on an active construction site. The ground beneath our feet, it's a living, breathing entity that's under constant revision. New land forms as old land burns, meaning creation and destruction are coexisting right this very second.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with continent under construction, then check out the architects, fire and ice, followed by the sculptors, water and time. After that, we'll see how life adapts to extremes. And finally, we'll wrap up with how geography shapes human history.
So Part 1. A continent under construction. This is the massive construction site beneath our feet. Think of the land itself as an active architect. It's constantly drafting, erasing, and redrawing its blueprints grain by grain. And really, everything we see is dictated by a super simple rule of three. Fire builds, water shapes, and wind carries the story forward. It's just this rhythmic, endless cycle of creation and erosion. Volcanoes push up brand new land from the ocean floor, rainfall softens those jagged ridges, and then wind polishes the valleys. The creation of this continent never actually ends, you know? It just changes tempo.
Moving on to Part 2. The architects, fire and ice, the battle of extreme elemental forces.
We basically have two primary builders laying the foundation of the American landscape. And man, their methods absolutely could not be more different. On one hand, you've got Hawaii's Kilauea erupting in sheer creative fury at nearly 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, literally swallowing up forests to forge new rock. Then, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, you have Glacier Bay's tidewater glaciers. These immense, crushing walls of ice violently collapse into the sea with the explosive energy of a small earthquake. Fire creates the raw form, sure, but it's these massive sheets of frozen gravity that really carve out the mountains and valleys.
And this elemental battle, it creates some absolutely wild extremes. Take 282, for example. That is the jaw-dropping depth in feet below sea level of the Badwater Basin in Death Valley. We're talking about a landscape of brutal, untamed extremes, where summer ground temperatures can scream past 130 degrees. It is so hot there that rainfall literally vaporizes before it even has the chance to hit the scorching dirt. No way, right?
To even begin to grasp the mind-boggling scale of this geological history, we really have to look at the timeline. Mauna Loa has been steadily building land for 700,000 years. The Yellowstone caldera, which was an eruption 1,000 times larger than Mount St. Helens, by the way, went off 640,000 years ago. But here's the crazy part. Geology isn't just ancient, deep time history. Just 250 years ago, Glacier Bay was completely solid, wall-to-wall ice. In geological terms, 250 years is basically yesterday. So while our landscape's foundations were laid over these vast eras, it's actually still shifting right before our very eyes.
Let's get into Part 3. The sculptors, water and time, replacing violence with patience.
Once the lava cools down and the ice retreats, liquid water steps up, and its sculpting power is just staggering. Take canyon depths. The Grand Canyon drops a massive 6,000 feet, laying bare nearly 2 billion years of Earth's history. Zion's Virgin River Gorge slices 2,000 feet deep right through ancient fossilized deserts. And down in Texas, Santa Elena Canyon cuts 1,500 feet into solid limestone faces. Water erodes rock by roughly the thickness of a single sheet of paper each year. But with unimaginable patience, it has designed vast valleys and built entire plains over millions of years.
But water doesn't just cut straight down, does it? No, it actually teaches solid rock how to bend. Just look at the San Juan River. It meanders through 300-million-year-old rock, twisting an incredible 5 times within a stretch of just 6 miles. And over that time, it's cut 1,000 feet deep. Every single curve you see measures time and marks an era when the Earth was warmer, wetter, and quite a bit younger.
Now, water isn't always patient. Sometimes it's incredibly violent. About 15,000 years ago in eastern Washington, a massive ice dam that was holding back glacial Lake Missoula burst. I want you to imagine 500 cubic miles of water racing across the land at 60 miles per hour. It violently scoured the bedrock and carved out the channeled scablands, creating canyons hundreds of feet deep in a matter of days. It was this cataclysmic flood that essentially transformed the entire landscape almost instantly.
Which brings us to Part 4. Life adapts to extremes.
Evolution sharpens its teeth.
When the land itself fights this hard for survival, biology absolutely has to step up its game. Flora and fauna engineer themselves with some bizarre evolutionary traits just to exist. Mountain goats have rubberized hooves and thick coats to scale 60-degree sheer cliffs and survive negative 50-degree wind chills. Great white sharks evolved a staggering 2,000 pounds per square inch of bite force to dominate their violent Pacific feeding grounds. Humpback whales developed complex, cooperative bubble net feeding, literally trapping fish in rising cages of air. And orcas? They form these tight, elder female-led pods with highly unique echolocation dialects that they pass down for generations.
When pushed to the absolute edge, life becomes hyper-specialized. Take the Canada lynx. Navigating deep, brutal snows, it relies on snowshoe hares for a full 75% of its diet. To survive this extreme environment, the lynx evolved oversized paws that act like natural snowshoes, plus incredibly acute hearing to hunt prey insulated entirely under the snow crust. The predator and the prey are locked in this perfectly adapted dance that's dictated entirely by the freezing climate.
4,800. That number is just wild. Bristlecone pines in the Great Basin can actually exceed 4,800 years in age. That means these trees predate most of recorded human history, and they exist where almost nothing else can survive, clinging to windswept mountain ridges with soils as thin as dust. It is just absolutely awe-inspiring endurance.
Finally, Part 5. Geography shapes human history, imitating nature's forms. As human civilization expanded across the continent, we didn't just conquer this wild geology. Actually, it's more like we anchored ourselves directly into the blueprints nature had already drafted. And this brilliantly illustrates how iconic cities adapted to their foundations. San Francisco balances on 43 hills right along the San Andreas Fault. Its engineering uses deep concrete caissons and, of course, cable cars to handle grades exceeding 20%. Chicago sits on deep clay next to Lake Michigan, which literally sparked the invention of the steel frame skyscraper built on deep timber piles. And Las Vegas, it thrives in the Mojave Desert on just 4 inches of rain a year by tapping into Hoover Dam power and ancient deep underground aquifers.
You'll find these brilliant urban adaptations everywhere. St. Augustine survived centuries by building its forts out of Coquina limestone, which actually absorbs cannon fire instead of shattering. Santa Fe utilized thick adobe earthen walls for thermal mass to regulate the desert's extreme temperature swings. Seattle specifically engineered its Space Needle to withstand magnitude 9 earthquakes generated by the shifting tectonic plates below. And Boston expanded by filling in tidal flats, meaning its historic brick structures are resting on submerged wooden piles that are preserved only because they are constantly saturated by groundwater.
So what does this all mean? Well, civilization hasn't replaced nature. It continues its geometry in steel and stone. Every bridge we cross, every dome we admire, and every skyscraper we work in traces right back to the exact same geological blueprint. We are quite literally living inside the continuing geological story of North America.
So I want to leave you with this question. How is the geology beneath your feet shaping your life today? The next time you walk outside, take a second. Look at the tilt of the streets, the materials of the buildings, or the curve of the nearest river. Just remember that those deep, unseen architects of fire, ice, water, and time are still furiously at work, right under your shoes. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, keep looking around,